Right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Schroth, and I am the regional coordinator for the Homeless Education Program, or also known as the Education for Children and Youth Experiencing Homelessness Program. And just forgive me here while I pull that up for you. Again, it's the Education for Children and Youth Experiencing Homelessness program. This program falls under the McKinney-Vento Federal Act, which we'll be discussing primarily during this presentation, and the safeties and protections for your students who are eligible. I am the Region 6 coordinator, and so what that means is that our state is broken up into 8 regions. Our region is the large purple region in the sort of west center part of the state. My office is located in Indiana, but of course, you're seeing me, so I do serve Clearfield County among 11 total. So in those 11 counties, we serve 63 school districts. We work with all of the children and youth agencies in each county, as well as other social services that families and or students might be eligible for when they are experiencing homelessness. We, of course, also work with all of the shelters because, of course, living in a homeless shelter, domestic violence shelter, would also qualify someone as experiencing homelessness. Oh, just to go over sort of my roles and responsibilities for the program is that I advocate for students and families when they are experiencing homelessness to ensure enrollment at school, that they continue their education and support the school districts in that process, and also the family and or student in that process. We provide referrals for different social service agencies for housing, food pantries, clothing, closets, etc., and also provide that information to the liaisons who are all in our schools. We provide professional development just like this about the Pennsylvania specific provisions, but also regarding the federal act, which was put in effect in 1987. So we're getting close to that 40-year mark of this program existing. We provide educational resources to students experiencing homelessness, and those can include book bags and other necessary school supplies, in addition to necessities like hygiene products, sometimes clothing. We work with Bombas and provide socks, underwear, and t-shirts now to schools and to students as well, as needed. And then lastly, one of my responsibilities is also to provide assistance for our school districts with enrollment disputes. And that's when a school district might deny enrollment to a family that they don't feel the student is truly experiencing homelessness. Those happen very infrequently in our region. All of our districts are excellent at getting students enrolled and participating in school very quickly when they are unhoused. Just to share a little bit with you about the federal law before we kind of talk about what homelessness looks like for students, is just that McKinney-Vento was a federal act, as I mentioned, went into effect in 1987, and it was the first law of its kind to protect children who were experiencing homelessness and by providing them with educational stability rather than having to change schools every time they had to leave their home for a variety of reasons. So often, folks think of someone who's experiencing homelessness as an individual who is living on the streets, might be unkempt, middle-aged, male. I think often people think of tents and encampments, individuals sleeping on benches or, in a cardboard box, right, is sort of that stigmatized version of homelessness. And while that's not inaccurate, there are certainly folks who live in those circumstances. What we do know is that the true face of homelessness are families with their children. The fastest growing population of individuals of those experiencing homelessness are women, children, and their families. And statistically, at this time, we know that roughly 1 in 30 children in America is experiencing some type of homelessness, which is an all-time high. Many of the families who are experiencing homelessness are typically single mothers with their children, and they're leaving their home because of some sort of intimate partner violence, whether that is physical violence or sexual abuse. And so women are leaving their partners and leaving their homes. Of course, there are a variety of other reasons, but domestic violence is a very large number of the numbers reported for homelessness. When we look at children and youth who are experiencing homelessness, and so that means any child from birth through completion of high school, so up to 22, their 22nd birthday now in Pennsylvania, when surveyed, over half of those children who participated in a survey through Chapin Hall claimed that they spent at least one day every month without food. As educators, we know that kids can receive meals at school Monday through Friday. Pennsylvania currently has free breakfast, and many of our school districts throughout the state have the Community Impact Grant, which helps with food insecurity in a lot of our schools. But students who on holiday breaks or long weekends, or even just on a weekend, may go the whole weekend or the whole break without a guaranteed meal. And so many communities, community action programs, and other food um, Yep, food kitchens. I can't think of the word at the moment. I apologize. Food pantries is the word I was looking for. Food pantries have established programs for weekend meals as well for kiddos to help with that food insecurity. I always share, like, my kids have access to food, whenever they need it, but knowing that there are kiddos um, whose refrigerators may be locked, or they don't have access to a full pantry, and that they are fighting to figure out when their next meal might be, other than when they are in the school building. It is a scary thing that they face. I always think it's super important to also highlight that there's an increased risk of human trafficking for children who are experiencing homelessness, especially children who are abandoned, kicked out, thrown out, or maybe have run away from home. Typically, I think we think of that subgroup of kiddos as teens, but it does happen to younger children, of course, as well. Um, but over 20,000 kiddos a year are at risk and forced into prostitution and other forms of human trafficking each year. Sometimes that human trafficking, and it's not because someone's abducted them. It's oftentimes a relative, a family friend, or someone that they're living with who they might deem trustworthy, that they may be trafficking them for their next fix. Or we've worked with families and children who have been trafficked by their own parents as a form of payment for rent, which is terrifying. Right. So that they are in an increased risk at the time when they are experiencing homelessness, because that they are trafficked for money purposes. So when we think about children who are experiencing homelessness, we look at, or I'm so sorry, got my train of thought, my train jumped off the track. When we talk about children experiencing homelessness, and as I mentioned before, we often think of adults who are experiencing homelessness, but when usually when I do this in person, I survey the audience and kind of get a couple of guesses on who might, the age of those who might be experiencing homelessness. But what we know through federal research and statewide data collecting is that the average age of a child or person experiencing homelessness in Pennsylvania and across the United States is actually between the ages of 9 and 12. Right, so those are our elementary kiddos, our third, fourth, fifth graders, and I guess, sixth and seventh if we, 9 to 12 is a wide range, but typically the elementary age. So when we are looking at what the educational definition of homelessness is, we're following the federal law, which states that a child is experiencing homelessness if they're lacking a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. So fixed means that it is a permanent structure and it cannot be moved. So if they're lacking a fixed nighttime residence, that means that they're staying somewhere like in a camper or a car, a tent, or other movable structures. Regular is all about the routine, and again, it's about where routine nighttime status. So if it is not regular, they are staying somewhere like a hotel or a shelter, which are not designed for long-term living. They could be staying with a relative and couch surfing in different locations weekly or even daily. And of course, there are other regular, irregular nighttime residences as well. And then adequate. Adequate is tough to define. And, of course, each situation has to be determined on a case-by-case basis. But I think when we all look at a mobile home such as this one, I don't think any of us would deem it adequate for ourselves or our students. But I know I've worked with families, I've worked with kiddos in the past who've lived in a structure not too unlike this one, where there's multiple family members, multiple animals in them. It's not really safe. Adequate is about safety. It's about lack of space and lack of electricity or running water, heat, etc. And again, each situation is determined on a case-by-case basis. Some additional categories that fall under eligibility are shared housing. That shared housing is where we find most of the families in our region living who are experiencing homelessness. And in our terms, we use the wording doubled up. Typically, folks who are living doubled up are doing so because of economic hardship and because of a loss of a job or because of illness or for some other reason. Between 70 and 75% of the families identified in our region, just in our 11 counties, are living doubled up. And that's because we lack shelters, motels, hotels, and other alternative accommodations. Those motels, hotels, campgrounds, and shelters, of course, all fall under the definition as well. We have, of course, worked with families who've lived in tents and cars. In the past, we've worked with a family where kiddos were staying with the grandparents while mom was staying in a storage unit, and worked with some of our community action programs and social services to help them obtain housing eventually. Some additional eligibility, just a few others. I mentioned shelters, but children who are placed under a safety plan, which is temporary and not court ordered by the Children and Youth Agency, would be considered experiencing homelessness. Any migratory children living in any of the prior mentioned circumstances. And then our last subcategory are unaccompanied homeless youth. And they are the children who are not living in physical custody of a parent or guardian and are lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. The law states that they could have been kicked out, thrown out, run away, abandoned, and or separated from their parents for any other reason. There's some additional protections, which I certainly won't have time to get into today, but I want to discuss just a couple of the protections for all students. Additionally, when we're looking at where a family is sleeping or where a child is sleeping, we want to look at why they are in that situation. And this is what Katrina's uh, job is, to kind of dig in and find out what the primary reason for their loss of permanent housing is. We look at natural disasters, um, illness, domestic violence, divorce and separation, and of course, many, many others. So this list here on the screen is not an all-inclusive list. There are a multitude of other reasons why a child might lose their permanent housing. You as school district staff are vital in identifying these students and referring to your homeless liaison. We just want to make sure that you are aware of the definitions so that your administrators and so that your homeless liaison, Katrina, can dig in, can do some research, and then also help, once identify, support the family and the child. So the reason that it's so important for us to identify them is to provide school stability. And the way we provide school stability is by keeping students in their district of origin the entire time they're experiencing homelessness and allowing them to finish the academic year at that school, even once they become permanently housed. It's just so important to continue that stability, even when, the rest of their life might not be stable. The opposite is also true. If a family becomes homeless and they are staying in another school district, they do also have the right to choose to enroll in the district where they're sleeping at night. It's up to the family and or student on which district they are educated in. And again, the school district can help them facilitate that decision, but it is up to the family or the child to make that decision. They don't get to flip-flop. Enrollment is supposed to be immediate if they do choose to enroll in that school district where they're staying at night. And most of the vital documents that are normally required for enrollment can be overlooked at the time in order to ensure immediate enrollment. That doesn't mean that we can't acquire them later, but they can be overlooked at the time of enrollment. School districts are to work together to provide transportation to the student to the school district where they are going to be educated. And the homeless liaisons and transportation coordinators and administration are responsible for arranging all of those things. And I think I mentioned already, but students who are identified are also eligible for free meals. Yes, every school in Pennsylvania has free meals this current school year, but any other subsequent year where we may not have that program, they would be eligible for those free meals, breakfast and lunch, of course. And then any student who is experiencing homelessness should be permitted to participate fully in all school activities as well. So those include extracurriculars, in addition to any clubs that are held during the school day as well. So I'm going to breeze through the data. Our most recent data here is from the 23-24 school year. 50,000 students were identified, children were identified during that school year as experiencing homelessness. And I said 70 to 75% were doubled up, and actually it was 77% during that school year. Which is an all-time high for us. If you have students who would like to consider maybe doing a project, or we have kids who make blankets for us throughout the year or help us with awareness projects, you can certainly reach out to me or through Katrina, and We could set something up, have kids who make blankets for us or do donation drives. And I really do enjoy talking to them about how they can, how just a simple act of tying a knot with a blanket or donating a can of food or pencils can help someone else in need. There's a wealth of resources across the nation and here in Pennsylvania if you'd like to learn more about our program and the supports, or you can certainly reach out to myself or my colleague, Ms. Walker, here at our intermediate unit in Region 6. Thank you all so very much for your time this afternoon. Hope you have a great rest of your school year. And again, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or need assistance. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.